Published research tends to describe leadership characteristics and their consequences rather than training them. In this video, we will explore how to become a good leader. Leaders of exceptional vision and skill may well be born rather than trained. However, such natural leaders are few. For most people, leadership skills can be taught in a two-phase process and developed by guidance, experience, and reflection. The first phase is in learning concepts and the tools of leadership. The second is practical implementation and refinement gained by dealing with changing situations and particular individuals. Learning from experience does improve leadership skills, but it is maximised by honest and respectful feedback from other people. Let's look at some practical points of instruction. Increasing perceptiveness, especially in softer science, makes people increasingly sceptical about the conclusions of others. The more sophisticated audience become, the more leaders or instructors should err towards showing evidence and allowing individuals to draw their own conclusions, rather than drawing conclusions from evidence and then expecting those conclusions to be accepted in the absence of the evidence itself. This particularly applies when it comes to human factors in healthcare, an area with limited evidence to support much of what it is proposed, and that evidence seldom reaches the rigorous level expected by the medical profession. Medical personnel rarely tell each other what to do. They ask for advice, they present evidence, and they discuss the implications of that evidence.
A specialist trainee in orthopaedics spent her first year with 2 consultants, both of whom were relatively recently appointed. She then rotated to a more senior consultant, aged in his mid-50s, who had a more established reputation. Dissectomy is a common orthopaedic operation, and the registrar learned how to do this with the recently appointed consultants using a minimally invasive small skin incision and specially designed retractors. The more senior consultant used a traditional approach to the operation, with a longer skin incision, no use of special minimally invasive retractors, and heavy dependence on bony surgical landmarks. The registrar thought this was old-fashioned, unnecessarily invasive, and distinctly suboptimal. The authority gradient in the theatre made it difficult for the registrar to openly discuss this with the consultant, so she probed with questions about whether more minimally invasive options were available. The consultant had faced this situation before and recognised the direction of the registrar's thoughts. During the operation, he gave the following so that all the staff could hear. There are minimally invasive options. I have used them, and on occasion I still do. Every year, 50 dissectomy operations are done under my care, of which I do 20 personally. The other 30 are done by trainers such as yourself. It's my responsibility to ensure that all 50 operations are done satisfactorily with minimal risk. The reason I do it this way is not for me, but for you. It can be done with minimally invasive techniques, but it's more difficult and consequently more prone to variation depending on surgical skill. If you do it my way, it avoids a lot of variability due to surgical skill and availability of specialist equipment.
The junior consultants had learned how to operate but lacked experience in supervising and delegating surgery. The more senior consultant had this experience and had developed a method that could be easily and safely adopted by inexperienced registrars. He had also recognised the registrar's concerns before she had fully expressed them, and before she had expressed her opinion. He explained his reasons in front of the whole team. As the registrar had not expressed an opinion, she had no face to lose if she changed it. This left her open-minded to his reasoning, and she accepted it as sound. She began to use his technique herself. People with credible leadership are closely watched and copied by those around them. The orthopaedic surgeon in this scenario thought and acted like a leader, choosing a method because it was easy and safe for others to copy. This is generally true and is the reason why actions speak louder than words. Show, don't tell is an important strategy when a team has a higher level of education than the leader. Motivation and credibility are clearly linked, but they are not quite the same. Good leaders have an ability to add motivation to the team's desire to complete the task effectively. They use this to bring the team through difficult times, to supplement the motivation of individual team members where this is lacking, and to direct efforts towards areas that are likely to be most productive. Unlike credibility, motivation is much easier to teach. There are specific actions that lead to motivation. It is no doubt true that some people have a natural gift for enthusing others, but while some people can never achieve credibility, most can learn how to motivate. Positive reinforcement means responding to something another person does in a way that encourages them to do it again, generally by appreciating, thanking or praising them. Let's take a surgeon who occasionally holds a pre-list briefing. If on those occasions theatre staff thank him and say how the briefing helped, then the surgeon is more likely to carry out briefings more often. Positive reinforcement is an effective technique and, because it involves only praise, it is also inexpensive. Team members should feel in possession of the process. When a team member has an idea, they should be recognised for this, as it will encourage them to make it succeed. When an idea has input from other team members, it is good to let them feel ownership. Just as crediting team members with success draws them to the leader and motivates them to perform well, blaming them for failures drives them away and makes them feel demotivated. There are occasions when things go wrong and blaming is either obvious or could potentially be apportioned. The motivational approach is to separate the problems and issues from the people. Even if someone is clearly to blame, it is more likely to be due to their lack of training, poor team communication, or inappropriate personnel deployment rather than deliberate misconduct. These issues can be handled without implying a personal judgment about an individual team member. The default position of task delegation in teams is for the same tasks to be given to the same people, time and time again. Usually distributed from the most important or interesting to senior members, to the most straightforward, repetitive and dull to junior members. Changing this pattern of delegation can be highly motivational. By giving more junior team members tasks they're capable of, but do not generally get and may not even know they can do, will both develop and motivate them. Commonality of purpose is the leadership technique that can be improved most. It requires that all the people involved in a project agree with its ultimate goals and its methods. Without this, the only way to get people to act is through the exercise of power. Achieving commonality requires leaders to see the situation from different points of view. Their own, those of the team members, those of patients, and those of the organisation as a whole. Leaders should be careful not to become parochial in their approach to the organisation. Conflicts between the interests of the team and the organisation do arise and require balanced judgment and background explanations to resolve. Without this, the leader is liable to toxicity in the form of the inverse apparatchik. Commonality of purpose is gained when the leader communicates by explaining the aims and is sufficiently flexible to change any proposals and methods of achieving them to concur with those of others. Very few leaders attract a significant following that endures long after their death. Those few that have achieved this, such as the founders of the world's great religions, were characterized by the tendency to prioritize the development of others over their own interests. Developing other team members is the way in which leaders secure the most lasting loyalty and respect. Commonality of purpose, credibility, leading by example, team member development and motivation are all advanced by visibility. Visible leaders are easy to find and easy to approach. They have offices that are conveniently located in their departments and spend time in and around the teams they lead. The degree of visibility is often limited by time constraints and professional personnel are generally under time pressure. and see activities like corridor chatting, meetings, social gatherings, and visible supervision of competent team members as a less productive use of time than perhaps writing reports or doing research. Whilst it is important there is a balance, there is no more effective way of achieving your own objectives than to motivate others to share and work towards them too. Diffusion of responsibility refers to a tendency for people to take less responsibility for their actions or inactions when other people are present. Individuals assume that others will take the necessary action or have already done so. Diffusion of responsibility is prone to occur in groups of 3 or more people and is more likely if tasks and responsibilities have not specifically been assigned. As such, it is a particular risk of the democratic leadership style. The solution is to clearly allocate responsibility. The autocratic style is also affected by diffusion of responsibility. Subordinates readily disengage themselves from everything except what they have been instructed to do, and do not make allowances for changing situations without new instructions. When adverse events occur, subordinates later claim to have been just following orders. Supervisors claim their role was to give instructions, not carry them out. Such explanations have followed many crimes against humanity. The solution: offer more democratic engagement with group members, but be specific about who does what. All organisations contain some serious-minded people who may be dismissive of humour, viewing it as a frivolous and distracting waste of time. However, the conclusion from research on the subject is quite the opposite. Data from a wide range of working environments show that appropriate humour can improve productivity, teamwork, morale, and reduce work-related stress. It can diffuse anger and soften reprimands. It allows things to be said that would be unacceptable in a serious context. It has utility in problem-solving, decision-making, and enhancing creativity. These are all positive effects of humour. So, what are the disadvantages? Humour can easily be viewed as trivialising issues, denigrating, flippant, or prejudiced. Humorous statements can be turned against the maker by others, especially, perhaps, in competitive environments. Official documents, protocols, manifestos, medical records, and official correspondence never contain humour. Another disadvantage is that not everyone is equally adept at humour. Therefore, blanket advice to use it cannot be followed by everyone. The right balance is something individuals must judge for themselves, but within these constraints, humour has some very serious benefits.